Hello, beauties. I am Ursula Hardiman, aka the Enhancer of Enhanced Beauty. Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and if you would like to see how I achieve this look, stay tuned. Let's begin first with brows. Here I'm penciling in my eyebrows with Spiked Eyebrow Pencil by MAC. It doesn't matter how thick you make your brows because you have to go back and clean them up anyway. So here I'm cleaning up the bottom of the brow, carving it out, getting it all crisp for the makeup look. Every good look begins with great eyebrows. So once you have that all done, this is MAC's NC40, I think it's NC40 by MAC. No, I'm sorry, NW40 by MAC. So now I'm buffing it out with the big buffer brush. You have to make sure it's nice and smooth. Now here I'm carving out the top. I always use a concealer that's closer to my skin tone. I don't like it too light on the top. And here it's MAC's NC45 that I'm using on top. Now I'm carving out the other side. Now here is where you can make them either. You can have them thick or you can make them thinner. It's really your preference. Now here I'm using MAC's Painterly Paint Pot as my eyeshadow base. Buffing it out with the big buffer brush. And now on to the other side. You have to make sure that you have a good base in order for your eyeshadows to pop and for them to stick and last all day. Here I'm buffing it out once again. Now I'm beginning to put in my transition color. This is MAC's Soft Brown that's going into the crease. You can start with a lighter shade. And here I'm using a little bit darker, which is MAC's Swiss Chocolate. I always use a brown typically or an orange in the crease. So now I'm going in just to kind of give it a little bit more depth. I don't remember which shade this is. Oh no, this is Makeup Addictions, and I don't remember the shade color. But I'm just intensifying the crease just a little bit more. And this is for a natural looking look, so I'm not trying to go dramatic. I always get clients that want a natural looking look. So now here I'm putting in just a little bit darker just to add a little bit more depth to that crease. This is a brown also by Makeup Addictions Cosmetics. It's in their Flamin' Love palette. Again, I'm just creating just a little bit more depth before I add my lid color. So now you always want to make sure that your colors are blended well. I always tend to use a bit of a fluffy brush to go back and blend all the colors together. Now here on the lid is also a color from Makeup Addiction Flamin' Love palette. This is all over the lid. You saw me spray it because that kind of intensifies the pigment that comes onto the lid. This is one of the shades out of the palette. Again, I do the same thing on this side. You spray it if you want it a little bit more intense. Now here I decided to add a little shimmer to the brow bone. I'm using Champagne by NYX Cosmetics. Just wanted to add a little bit more highlight. Everyone loves a glow. So now I'm adding, doing the wing liner. This is my first time doing a wing liner on camera and not being directly into the mirror. And I must tell you that it was a bit hard. Wing liners are already hard. And when you don't have a big mirror in front of you, I tell you, it is really hard to do. So I was using my little hand mirror and my mirror up top, but I think I pulled it off a little bit. For the first time, I did good. Now I'm using NYX Cosmetic Matte Liquid. It's the Liquid Black Liner by NYX Cosmetics, but it's the Matte Liquid Black Liner. This is actually my first time using this. I usually use a gel liner, but I wanted to try this matte liquid liner, and I must say I did like it. It did the job and it stayed black the entire time, even after lash application. Now I'm just adding a little mascara to my lashes so that my eyelashes can blend a little bit better. Now here I'm taking a wet baby wipe and just cleaning up all the eyeshadow fallout and just kind of making sure it's nice and crisp. Now here, every flawless face begins with moisturizer. Now I'm taking moisturizer and moisturizing it, passing it all along my face, everywhere the foundation will be, because you want a smooth, flawless finish. Now I'm using my Smashbox Photo Finish Primer to prime my face. This is my favorite primer. It always gives you flawless coverage. Now, I choose to use a color corrector under the eye and along the top of my lip because that conceals dark spots. Although it's not very dark, it does help with the final finish of the makeup application. Now here I'm just taking my beauty blender and buffing it into the skin. I kind of like to use a damp beauty blender to buff it into the skin because it helps to make it just look just a tad bit more flawless. But you don't have to use a damp beauty blender. That's just what I choose to do. Now I like to take a concealer. I use the concealer that's closest to my skin tone underneath my foundation and on top of the color corrector. And that's what I'm using here, which is MAC's NC45. This is the Studio Finish Concealer. Now here I'm taking my foundation, and this is MAC's NW45, and I'm just buffing it into my skin. I like to make sure that the foundation, I don't typically drag the brush. I like to buff it into the skin, and I always go down into the neck. You want to go down into the neck to keep it from looking like a line of demarcation. So you want to make sure that it blends out into the ears, blends out into the neck, blends well into the hairline, and that's what I'm doing here, just blending it all in. Then once it's blended in, once you have it blended and everything is where you want it to be, you take the beauty blender, which I'm doing here, and you buff it even more into the skin. You just want to, it just makes for a smooth, flawless application. You just take that beauty blender, and it may feel like you're pounding, but you buff it into the skin. Now here I'm starting the highlight. I'm using MAC's NC42 to highlight. Now I typically don't always highlight, but here I wanted to do a little bit highlighting. Highlight is everywhere you want the light to hit. So you take that highlight, you use it under the eyes. I'm buffing out with the beauty blender under the eyes, down the bridge of the nose, the cupid's bow, the chin, and right there in the forehead, right in the top. Those are typically all of your highlight areas. You buff it in, make sure it's blended well, because you don't want a white chalky finish, and you don't want it to just look extremely white, especially if you're taking pictures, which I tend to do a lot. You don't want it to have that type of look. So you want to buff it in very well. You make sure it's blended really well into the skin. Now here I'm taking the setting powder. This is Sacha Buttercup setting powder, and I'm setting it everywhere that I place the concealer. And I don't typically bake. I like to put it on and I brush it right off, and that's what I'm using, a big fluffy brush to take it right off. All I needed is to set the concealer in place. Now here I'm contouring the bridge of the nose. I always begin with contouring the bridge of the nose. When you contour, you're bringing the color back into the skin, back into the complexion. Now here I'm contouring right up underneath the apples of the cheek. You contour around the hairline, and I typically go in the direction of the hairline, but you contour the apples right underneath the apples of the cheek, around the hairline, the bottom of your jawline. You go all along the jawline, and what it does is it helps to slim the face whenever you contour. And here I'm using the CoverGirl Queen Ebony Bronze. Now here I'm taking the Sasha Cosmetics Buttercup Setting Powder, and I'm carving out, just kind of making sure that it is a defined line for the contour. I don't always do it, and you don't have to do it, but I like to do it sometimes. And now I'm taking a little blush. I'm using MAC's Peach Me blush just to kind of add a little color to the cheeks. And now here I'm highlighting with MAC's Cheeky Bronze. I love to highlight, but sometimes you want a little bit more glow. And in this case, although it gave me a little bit of shimmer, I think I want just a little bit more, highlighting the bridge of the nose. And here is this is Urban Decay's illuminator. I wanted to intensify the highlight just a little bit, so I just went over MAC's Cheeky Bronze with the Urban Decay. I love both of the highlighters very much, so it really doesn't matter. You can't go wrong with either one. Then I decided I wanted to just carve out that contour just a little bit more and define it just a little bit more. And here I'm going to take the big fluffy brush and brush it right off because I don't want it to be too white, too chalky. Now, I'm doing my under eye. I'm taking the same shadows that I used on top to give me a little bit of depth underneath the eye before I add the eyeliner. And I used the same order, the MAC Swiss Chocolate. Then I went over it with the color from Makeup Addictions. I don't remember the name of it. Then the brown. And then just to add a little bit more depth to it, I decided to add MAC's Sketch right on top. Then I'm adding a little bit of the highlight in the corner, which is MAC's Nylon. I am not sponsored by MAC. I just happen to love the product. Now here I'm taking NYX's Jumbo Pencil in Black Bean and adding it as an eyeliner. And here I'm just kind of smoothing it out, bringing it all together, blending the colors really well. Now it's time for the lipstick. I'm using MAC's lip liner in Vino. And I want to create an ombre lip because I typically have people ask me all the time, how do you do an ombre? So you always use your darker color on the outside. And in this case, it's the lip liner in Vino. And then you take a lighter shade and you put on the inside, which here I'm using MAC's Snob. And then you blend, blend, blend. You have to make sure it's blended really well. Blend, blend, blend. Blending is always the key to a flawless look, whether it's the shadow or an ombre lip. So here I am just enjoying this. It turned out really well for my first, and that will conclude this first tutorial. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button.